You know how some words sound so familiar, you stop hearing them altogether? It's not you, it's me. I used to think that line only existed in movies, the kind of thing people said to soften the blow before walking away. But that day, when she looked me in the eyes and said it, I felt every word sink in. It wasn't loud or dramatic. There were no tears, no shouting, just quiet honesty that somehow hurt more than anything else could have. The way she said it. Calm, steady, like she had already cried her tears before coming to me. That's when I knew this moment was real. My heart didn't shatter all at once. It was more like the slow cracking of something fragile, something that had already been breaking piece by piece without me noticing. I remember staring at her, trying to read between the lines, hoping to find a hidden reason, a way to fix it, but for the first time I couldn't. That was the day everything changed, not just between us, but within me. The day I realized sometimes people leave not because you did something wrong, but because they no longer feel whole themselves. At that moment, I didn't understand it. I just felt lost, standing there in silence, holding on to a love that was already slipping through my hands. If you've ever had someone walk away and leave you questioning everything, stay with me, because this story isn't just about heartbreak. It's about understanding what it means to truly let go. When I first met her, it felt effortless, like life had finally given me a moment of peace after a long stretch of chaos. She had this warmth about her that drew people in, the kind of person who made everyone around her feel seen. I remember the first time we talked, we lost track of time completely. Hours slipped by, and it felt like minutes. We built our relationship slowly, like two people finding comfort in each other's presence. Late-night walks, coffee shop conversations, and those quiet evenings where we didn't need to say much. Just being near her felt like enough. I thought I had found something rare, something that would last. I trusted her completely. And maybe that's what made everything feel so perfect. That sense of safety, of knowing someone understood you without judgment. She told me once, "You make me feel calm in a world that never stops moving." I held on to that sentence for years. But looking back now, I realized something I didn't understand then. Sometimes people say things they mean in the moment, but not forever. We were two people trying to make each other happy, even when we didn't know how to make ourselves whole. At the time, though, I didn't see the cracks forming. I only saw the laughter, the shared dreams, the quiet promises of forever. I believed we were building something real, a future together. And maybe that's why what came next hurt so deeply. Because when love feels that genuine, the loss of it doesn't just break your heart. It changes the way you see love itself. Didn't happen overnight. That's the hardest part to explain. When love starts fading, it's quiet, almost unnoticeable at first. You don't wake up one morning realizing someone's slipping away. It happens in the pauses, in the moments that used to feel full but now feel empty. I started noticing small things. The way her laughter didn't sound quite the same. How her eyes seemed distant even when she was sitting right in front of me. We used to talk about everything. Dreams, fears, even the little annoyances of life. But suddenly, conversations became shorter. Her phone started to matter more than the person sitting across from her. I remember asking her once if everything was okay. She smiled, that practiced, polite smile, and then said, "Of course, I'm just tired." I wanted to believe her. I told myself she was stressed, that work was wearing her down. But deep down, a quiet voice whispered that something wasn't right. One evening, we were out for dinner, and I reached for her hand like I always did. She hesitated. Just for a second. But it was enough to feel the shift, that invisible line between us and me. I didn't confront her then. I wasn't ready to face the truth. Sometimes when you love someone, denial becomes your shield. You cling to what you want to be true instead of what's real. But the distance kept growing, and so did the silence between us. And I started realizing that the person I loved was slowly turning into someone I no longer recognized. It was a rainy Thursday, the kind of day that makes everything feel heavier. Still remember standing by the window, waiting for her to come home. She was late again, and my mind kept searching for reasons that didn't hurt. Maybe traffic, I told myself. Maybe she stayed late to finish something at work. When she finally walked in, her eyes avoided mine. There was no hug, no smile, just a quiet sigh that filled the room. She sat down across from me and said the words that would stay with me forever. "It's not you. It's me." I froze. For a moment, I didn't understand. My heart was pounding so loudly that I could barely hear her explain. She talked about needing space, about finding herself, about how she didn't want to keep pretending everything was okay. I remember nodding, trying to be calm, but inside, everything shattered. The walls we had built, the plans we had made, all dissolved into silence. I wanted to ask why, but I could see in her eyes that she didn't have an answer that would fix anything. There was no anger. Just an ache, deep, quiet, and final. She left the next morning. No fight, no goodbye kiss. Just a suitcase, a door closing softly, and a silence that felt louder than anything I'd ever heard. That was the day I realized that sometimes people don't leave because they stop caring. They leave because staying hurts more than going. And for the first time, I wasn't angry at her. I was just empty. The days after she left were a blur of quiet rooms and unanswered questions. I walked through the apartment like a ghost, tracing the places where our laughter used to echo. Every corner seemed to whisper memories I wasn't ready to let go of. I kept expecting her to walk back in, to explain, to apologize, or even just to smile. But the truth settled in slowly. She was gone, and the life we had shared now only existed in my mind. I felt lost, not because I didn't have someone else, but because I didn't recognize myself without her presence. Friends called, trying to fill the silence with conversation, but I couldn't respond the same way. Even simple things felt heavy. Making coffee, turning on the TV, scrolling through my phone, everything reminded me of what had been broken. I realized that grief wasn't loud or dramatic. It was quiet, persistent, and deeply personal. In that silence, I had to confront myself. I asked difficult questions. Was I holding on to illusions? Had I ignored signs? Did I love her or the idea of us? These reflections were painful but necessary. Slowly, I started to understand that healing isn't about forgetting. It's about learning to live with the absence and finding peace within yourself. I also realized something important. Protecting my heart doesn't mean closing it off. It means acknowledging pain, learning the lessons, and growing stronger. This period of emptiness, as hollow as it felt, became a quiet teacher, guiding me toward clarity and self-respect. And though the silence was deafening, it was also the first step toward hearing my own voice again. Time has a way of clarifying what we couldn't understand in the moment. Weeks turned into months, and the initial shock of her departure began to fade, leaving room for reflection. I started noticing patterns I had ignored before, little moments that now made sense in hindsight. I realized that her words, "It's not you, it's me," were not just an excuse. They were a reflection of her own struggles, her inability to fully commit, and perhaps even her fear of hurting me further by staying. Accepting this truth didn't erase the pain, but it offered perspective. I wasn't the problem, and the blame I had carried for so long wasn't mine to bear. I also learned something deeper about myself. For so long, I had defined my worth through her eyes, her approval, her love, her attention. When she left, I was forced to confront the person I had been beneath the relationship. I discovered resilience I didn't know existed, and a capacity for self-compassion that only comes from heartbreak. This lesson wasn't just about understanding her actions. It was about understanding my own. I had to let go of resentment, stop replaying what-ifs, and accept that some truths are only visible when distance gives you clarity. The heartbreak, the sleepless nights, the confusion, all of it became part of a larger story of growth and self-awareness. Most importantly, I learned that honesty, even when painful, is a gift. Her departure, though devastating, forced me to confront reality, embrace my own strength, and step into a version of myself that I could be proud of. This realization became the turning point, a bridge between loss and the ability to live fully again. After months of reflection, tears, and countless what-if moments, I began to understand that moving forward didn't mean forgetting her or pretending nothing had happened. It meant accepting reality, honoring my feelings, and giving myself permission to heal. The first steps were the hardest. I had to let go of the anger, the guilt, and the constant replaying of our last conversations. I realized that holding on to these emotions was keeping me tethered to a chapter that had already closed. Slowly, I replaced bitterness with understanding, not just of her, but of myself. I acknowledged my courage for loving deeply and my strength for surviving the pain. I also learned the value of boundaries. Protecting my heart meant not forcing answers from someone who had already made their choice. It meant prioritizing my well-being over lingering doubts or the hope that things could go back to how they were. This clarity gave me a sense of peace I hadn't felt in a long time. As I embraced life without her, I noticed subtle joys returning, laughter with friends, quiet moments of reflection, and the simple pleasure of making decisions for myself. Each day became a small victory, a reminder that healing is not linear but cumulative. By finally accepting the truth, I could move forward with confidence, not bitterness. I understood that love sometimes teaches us lessons through loss, and that leaving a relationship, when done thoughtfully and quietly, can be an act of self-respect. Most importantly, I realized that my worth isn't defined by anyone else's choices. I carry my story, my growth, and my resilience forward, ready for whatever comes next. Call to action. If you've ever experienced heartbreak or had to let go for your own well-being, share your story in the comments. How did you find peace after saying goodbye? Let's support each other through these difficult yet transformative moments.